everyone, welcome to Empowered Journalism, a female-led organisation providing a platform for young women wanting to get into journalism. Today we are speaking with ITV's Mojo Abidi and BBC's Sophia Smith-Gaylor. Most of you will probably recognise Sophia from her TikTok videos, whilst Mojo works for ITV's The Rundown, which is a news channel aimed at our younger audiences. Hope you enjoy! Hi everyone who's already joined us. We are Empowered Journalism and today we are speaking to Mojo and Sophia. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourselves first and then we'll get started.
Sure, I am visual journalist in faith and ethics for the BBC World Service.
Hi, I'm Mojo. I'm a journalist for ITV News. I currently work as a presenter and a producer on The Rundown, which is like our social media news show sort of aimed at younger audiences.
Perfect. Okay, so the first question that I'm sure a lot of people watching will want to know is, and it's the most typical question that you'll get in these workshops, but how did you both enter into the industry? Did you take like a typical route or did you take a more abstract one that's maybe not as common? Anyone want to go first?
Never mind, I can go first. I guess I took a more traditional route. I did work experience placements at magazines at school and I loved it. And from that, I decided to study journalism at university. So I did a BA at the University of Sheffield. And I'd always had it in my mind that I was going to do print or magazines. But while I was at uni, I ended up really falling sort of in love with broadcast journalism. And I did some broadcast placements at BBC Look North and ITV Calendar in Leeds. And I just like absolutely loved them and kind of like the visualness of it. And so I decided to sort of pursue that route. And after I graduated, I applied for the traineeships. And at the ITV one, I think I got down to the final two, but didn't end up getting a place, which I was like devastated about at the time. But I ended up getting a job at a press agency. And actually, I think that was like the best thing for me because I ended up picking up loads of like sort of core journalism skills like writing, finding stories, door knocking, like picking up the phone, doing interviews. And I spent a few months there and gained loads of experience. And then a job came up at ITV News Central in Birmingham, which was a TV news job. So I ended up applying there, did an interview, and because I'd had all this experience to sort of talk about, I ended up getting the job. And that's how I kind of got into journalism and then got into ITV News.
Sophia, do you want to?
Yeah, so I got into journalism. I don't know if you'd describe it as a conventional route or not, but it was full of the classic do unpaid work experience and then get some paid work experience in and eventually you get a job. I know it's the experience of lots of others as well. But I did an undergraduate degree in Spanish and Arabic. And my languages they've been a running theme of usefulness throughout my career. But while I was doing that degree, I didn't necessarily know I wanted to become a journalist. It was one of the careers that I was toying with. And I got a bunch of different work experience placements during that time, and many of them were to do with journalism. So I remember I got 2 weeks at BBC Arabic. I was an intern at a radio station when I did my year abroad in London. I did some unpaid work experience as well at a local newspaper, online newspaper in Spain that was English language speaking. And by the time I was finishing my undergrad degree, I thought, this is cool. This is something that I want to pursue. And I spent 4 years applying to journalism trainee schemes, and I never got through to even the first round for any of them. And I kept trying to apply to things, and I just realized that I lacked the fundamental technical skill set for broadcast journalism. So I went and did a master's in broadcast journalism at City. And at City, I started doing more work experience placements, but they were paid this time. So I did a paid internship at NBC News in London. And I got a gig basically on a BBC One documentary. I assisted the producer, interpreted Arabic for it. And then I applied for jobs, and the job that I got and that I picked, I think I got 2 jobs in the end, and I had to choose between the 2. And I chose social media producer at the BBC, and that's where it all began for me.
Amazing.
So our next question is, with the older generation not being as used to social media as people of our age, have you ever felt like there's been a tension between young journalists like you who use social media and older ones who see it differently?
Partially, yes, but also I think it can sometimes be down to personality type. So I have lots of colleagues, and I'm not only speaking about internally at the BBC, I'm talking about sort of in general in the industry. There are plenty of people who really see the use for TikTok, which is a platform that I've become known for. They've like readily seen how useful it can be. And they are decades older than me. And then there are people, journalists of my own age, who think that I'm just messing about on there. So it's not always an age thing that I think, but I also think that we all prioritize what we want to achieve with our work differently. And at the BBC World Service, part of our impact is documented by our reach, or tracked by our reach. So how many people will encounter my journalism, or encounter the stories that we're trying to tell. And any platform that helps me do that it's great. So yeah, I would caveat and say it's not always an age thing. It's about what you decide is important. And lots of people have this quite blinkered idea of what a journalist should be or should do. And I think we can't innovate that if we don't provoke it slightly and challenge perceptions of what a journalist should be, what a journalist should look like.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wouldn't say there's a tension, but maybe like a difference in opinion about the importance of the role that sort of digital and social media can play in journalism. I moved from TV news in sort of at ITV News Central in Birmingham into like a digital team here to do the rundown. And I know some people, including my grandparents, just thought that was a crazy move because they couldn't like understand sort of moving from TV into sort of social. But even during the pandemic, our whole lives have moved online. So much of what we do now is online and digital and on social media. So I just really see the importance of that. And, you know, it's just another way to reach, especially younger audiences.
Along the lines of social media and still on that topic, obviously both of you have an online presence, as many of us do at this age, but how do you deal with online trolls, and do you find that certain remarks or comments are hurtful, or have you kind of just built a tough skin that you can just kind of ignore it and be like, that's not important?
I'm not afraid to admit that the first time like I got a really mean message that I think I sat on the floor and cried, like I'm not afraid to say that, but I've definitely since then grown a tougher skin, and now I respond very differently to these messages. I'd say that I do seem to get a lot of messages about my appearance and in particular about my hair. And I think that's because we're not used to seeing different hair textures on screen. I often get told that I need to brush my hair, I need to straighten it, it looks dirty and it looks greasy. And I do think that comes down to a lot of the hair we see on screen is straight, and I wear my hair naturally curly, and we just don't see that many hair textures on screen. So that's one of the many reasons I kind of believe diversity in journalism is so important. I think for me, the reason that like appearance about my comments about my appearance hurt me the most is because I desperately want people to look past my appearance and to focus on my work and my journalism, just like they do with male journalists. But you know, that doesn't always happen. And I think the sexualization and kind of objectification of female journalists is a big problem, not just within journalism, it's, you know, a wider societal issue.
Yeah, I think it's because I don't cover really, only very rarely sort of on the day news. I never cover really anything particularly incendiary like political news. A lot of the things that I do are longer form documentaries about faith and ethics. You sort of sit there and ponder about them rather than get really angry about them. Like I think some people react to the news of the day and the news events and stuff. So I don't really get online trolling. And when I do, they're normally just completely stupid messages that they're not because there's nothing about them that's even remotely true or remotely backed up by anything. But I agree that there's an awful lot of sexualization, and something that I've talked about with colleagues before is that a lot of journalists like us who sort of praise what we're doing and the social media work that we're doing it's like 90% women, like basically all of us are girls. Where are the boys? And do they face the constant sexualization that we seem to be facing? Even this year, I had pictures uploaded to a celebrity foot fetish website. Like, why the hell would you upload a journalist's, and they were like full body pictures of me. It's not like I'm there uploading, I'm not even like uploading innocent pictures of pedicures or whatever to the internet. And somehow, these absolutely bonkers things happen. And I do wonder, we don't hear about it so much. And is it because for a lot of people's experience, it just doesn't happen because they're men? I don't know.
I'd also say that I think it's different on each social media platform. I think some social media platforms are definitely kinder than others. I'd say Facebook can be particularly mean. I think Twitter can be quite mean, but I found that Instagram and like TikTok, for example, people seem to be a lot kinder on there. I'm not sure why, but I just personally found that.
Yeah, I think it is a issue kind of with the wider society as well, obviously with you two getting those kind of comments as well, like you said, with the sexualization of female journalists. But yeah, that's really interesting.
So we've got another question. So for those of you who didn't take the typical route into journalism and don't have a journalism degree or qualification, would you recommend completing an NCTJ, or do you not think it's necessary?
That's kind of a hard question. It depends on like the route you want to take, and there isn't one single route into journalism. I personally did the NCTJ while I was at uni, and I did find it useful because I think it gave me, taught me some certain skills, sort of law, ethics, etc. But I don't think that's the only way into journalism. You can do apprenticeships and trainee schemes and stuff, but it is very competitive. And an NCTJ might be something that can give you like a bit of a head start.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And my first job at the BBC, and I'm sure my second, had I not been an internal applicant, asked for me to have a BJTC accredited qualification. And you don't have to get that one. You can get the NCTJ as well. The NCTJ is, I think, more for print, maybe. Yeah. And the other one is for broadcast journalism. But people have both in like all areas of journalism. But it does seem useful to have it.
So next question, this one's for you, Mojo. How did you find presenting news for children? Did you feel like you had to adapt so that you were engaging and educating them at the same time?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think if you watch sort of traditional TV news, you'll notice that presenters definitely have like a particular sort of newsreader voice, and it'll be done quite formally. And when we were doing the rundown, which is aimed at teenagers, we decided to go in a totally different way to that. And the way we present is very conversational, very casual, and we make jokes and stuff. And it's interesting. I think something that influenced that was actually sort of YouTubers and vloggers. They don't have a particular special voice that they put on. They talk to you as if they're talking to a friend. And, our audience grew up watching vloggers and YouTubers, so they're kind of used to that. So teenagers, they want you to talk to them like you're talking to them on the same level. They don't want you to talk down to them. So we chat to our audience like we're talking to like a friend or, a relative or something. But interestingly, I actually didn't have any presenting experience before I started at the Rundown. When the job advert was posted for the Rundown, I read it and I was like, that is what I want to do. Like I just knew it instantly. But I was really worried that my lack of presenting experience would really hold me back. I did have experience in sort of social media and like digital and a few of the other areas they wanted. I didn't have anything in presenting. So I started, I set up a camera in my bedroom and I started presenting and practicing, and I'd take those clips and I'd send them to presenters I knew, and I'd ask for a bit of feedback and I'd redo it. And so when I applied for my job at the Rundown, I had a few mock presenting sort of show reels, sort of things. And they weren't great, but I think they sort of showed passion and like willing to learn.
Thank you.
This question's particularly for Sophia. So, and it kind of links back to what we talked about before. So obviously TikTok has exploded, particularly in the first lockdown, and you're kind of seen as one of the almost pioneers of TikTok journalism. What made you think initially that TikTok would be a successful way of telling kind of news stories and conveying information? and why do you think it's an important platform to engage with people today? Because I know we have a few watchers who are kind of getting involved in TikTok journalism in general, so you're kind of a good person to ask this to.
Exactly what I was saying before about who is your target audience. There is no point doing journalism or trying to tell people stories that desperately need to be told if they don't land anywhere, if no one reads them or hears them or sees them. And if you look at all of the research that is telling us how people under 30 get their news, it's just not the way that people in that demographic have been getting the news for generations past. Every other content creator and publisher that's on the internet, on a newsfeed or a For You page, we're battling against them, competing in the same field. We can't rest on our laurels and assume that people are going to come and consume our content because we're the news and we're important and everyone should look at what we're doing. That just doesn't happen. If it's not interesting or engaging for a young audience, we don't want to see it. I am describing my friends when I'm talking about people sort of news avoiders, we actually call them sort of in the industry. And I'm describing myself. I don't own a TV. I don't watch, so I wouldn't encounter news content via television. I don't really listen to linear radio. I listen to podcasts. So I listen to things that support my niche interests, but will not tell me the news of the day. And I actually use the BBC website to get my news for the day. And I rely on breaking news alerts to tell me breaking news or something big that's happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't hear about it. I just wouldn't know. Equally, I don't know about certain things unless they're trending on Twitter or they're big on TikTok. Everyone's talking about it on TikTok. So it's simple. We have to put the news that we make and the stories that we want to tell there, and we have to make them really good so that we pop up on people's For You pages. But there's another side to this, which is I think TikTok is presenting journalists with a challenge that journalists haven't yet encountered in the same way. Like, it's such a fascinating recommendation algorithm. And it's a really interesting piece of social media tech, the way that it is catapulting people to fame in a way that we've stopped really being used to. Like, we know it kind of happens with YouTube, but it's not the same now. It would be very rare to suddenly explode on YouTube in a week and for people to suddenly know who you are. Instagram, no, the feed is now really heavily centered towards advertising, paid ads, taking away the attention. It's like, do you remember the halcyon days of a chronological feed? Like, that just seems like a million years ago. And there's something about that even a year later, it's still this wacky internet space that's about the creators and not about all the brands that want to advertise on there. I don't know if that will change, but at the moment, for me as a creator, it's certainly still a nice place to be. And there are just stylistic techniques that make you perform well on there, not necessarily taught as journalists. You basically only learn them if you spend time on TikTok, which is quite different to other social media platforms where we generally apply our journalism training and do well. If you apply your journalism training to TikTok, you probably won't do well because you have to almost unlearn some of these things and pick up more what TikTok style is and then go and do that. So it's really, really tricky, but it's a great challenge to set yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how TikTok's kind of evolved from this. When I was first introduced to it, it was kind of through my little sister doing all the dances and all the challenges, but now it's really become this kind of like education platform where you see all these people talking about issues, and especially with you and journalism TikTok. So I think it is really interesting how it's evolved.
I don't know if you have anything to add, Mojo, because I know you've recently done some videos yourself on TikTok?
Yeah, I'm playing around with it. I actually went to a talk that Sophia did, and I was like, I've always been someone who sort of scrolls on it but hasn't actually made any videos. So I've sort of started doing it. I think Sophia sort of covered all the main points, but it's definitely interesting. It just seems to be a platform that I think has thrown a lot of people off. I think platforms sort of like Instagram and Facebook and YouTube seem to be a bit more predictable, but TikTok just seems to be a bit more unpredictable. And it's really interesting to see how brands are kind of adapting to be on there or not.
Thank you. This is another question for you, Mojo. How does TV news differ from digital news, and is there any overlap?
It's a big question. Yes, they differ, a lot. The platforms themselves are so different. With TV, you're working towards a specific program that goes out at a very specific time and is a very specific length. When you're doing digital, your articles and videos can kind of be as long as short as you need them to be. There's like less of that schedule, which you have to follow. Also, your audiences are different. I find tele audiences can generally be a little bit older. Audiences on digital and social media can be like a bit younger. But then, of course, there is some overlap. A lot of the core journalism is the same. The stories that you're telling, the people that you're representing, there's kind of aims to inform and educate, even if you might be just doing them in stylistically kind of different ways and adapting them to the audiences. As someone who's like worked in both, I loved working in both for different reasons. I guess if you're thinking about like which direction you might want to go in, think about like how you actually consume your news. As Sophia was saying, I actually didn't have a TV for years. I now have one. But yeah, I definitely consume my news sort of digitally. And again, it'd be great if you're sort of thinking about those two sort of career paths to try. I know it's really hard at the moment because of the pandemic, but to try and get experience, because I do believe that until you've actually been into a workplace and experienced it sort of face to face, it's really hard to know if you'll actually enjoy working there. And I always thought that I was going to end up in magazines or in print. And then when I started doing placements, that's when I ended up sort of doing a complete gear change in my career. So I know it's really hard at the moment because of coronavirus, but if you can, try and get experience.
Sophia, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think, well, similar to you, I thought I was going to go and do print or write, whether it was going to be online or in physical copy. I just thought, I'm a writer, I'm going to write. And my job, literally in any 1 week or fortnight or month, I'd be making both. Like, you will make TV and you'll make digital, and you make video and you make radio. And that's something that is perhaps peculiar to working somewhere like the BBC that puts out all of that stuff. And you don't have to choose if you go and work somewhere like that. And the idea that we can make journalism that's multi-platform and goes out in all these different formats is something that I really enjoy. I get a lot of satisfaction from the sort of technical side of it, as well as the creative. But I mean, yeah, you can't get anywhere unless you've got experience. And you also don't know if you like it unless you've had experience doing it. You might think it's amazing. I wanted to write, and then I got to make a bit of radio, and I thought, wow, not only do I get to write it, I get to then read it out. That's cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And just to add to that multi-platform thing, it's a really good point, actually. I don't know any TV shows now that exist without any form of digital, being, or digital, like, will exist on any platform. There seems to be both now. And, the world's becoming more digital. So I think if there was the two have to coexist.
Yeah, definitely. Sophia, this is kind of another question aimed at you. So obviously you cover some very interesting and unique stories, perhaps because of your kind of linguistic and religious standpoint on these subjects. But I'm sure a lot of our listeners would love to know where you look for stories and how do you know they'll be successful, which is kind of something that our listeners have always been interested in, how you guys as journalists find these stories, because they seem so kind of not blatant.
So I do have to say that my news sense is better, so much better than it was, say, 2 years ago. It's one of those things that you do hone doing the job. I don't know anyone who popped up straight on the scene and knew how to do it. Like, everyone's taken months, years to pick it up. I will continue improving mine, you know, it's still not there yet. But how I go about finding stories, on top of having a news sense, it's no coincidence that I was hired to help find stories that reach people under 30, including especially women. And it's like, what am I? Oh yeah, I'm a woman under 30. So your own identity will help give you an understanding of what is interesting to people like you, I think. So I would use that. And when you are looking at conversation topics on social media, there will be things you read that and you think, that's interesting, I didn't know that. And if you didn't know it and you're pretty clued up, then think about all the people who also don't know about it. So I'm typically trying to give some like proper examples of stories that I guess I found in the past. But I actually quite rarely use social listening tools. I do use them, and I end up using them quite a lot to kind of enrich my stories with a bit of data journalism. They're very finding trending conversation topics. So there are times where I've done a story before actually, where it was going viral on CrowdTangle. CrowdTangle said it was gonna, you know, it was getting more and more popular and I need to do a story on this because there's a lot of audience appetite for it. So that's an example of one way to find a story. But all my TikTok exclusives that I've done, I've found because I've been on TikTok and I've basically fallen of things where I've been times where, based on my own kind of cultural awareness or religious awareness, I come across something and I think that's peculiar, and then I look into it a bit more and I'm like, yes, that hunch that I had's been confirmed, or oh, that hunch I had actually not a hunch, this is something completely ordinary, normal, and no, it's not news. So there are plenty of times where I think I find a story and I learn that it's not a story. Yeah, it all takes time, but it certainly helps me that I have a specialism, because understanding of what is unusual and what's not.
And I think that is an interesting thing that you say about how you kind of have to follow through with your hunches and that can actually make a really good story. Mojo, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely would agree with sort of like using your own identity to sort of find stories and think about like why you're the best person to tell that story. As an example, next weekend is Chinese New Year. I grew up and was raised in Hong Kong. I lived there till I came to uni here. So I'm doing some Chinese New Year stuff, and I was reaching out to people and not finding who I want to talk to, not having people very keen to talk to me about this particular area that I'm doing. But I actually speak, it's very, very rough, but I do speak a bit of Mandarin from growing up there. So I started messaging people in Mandarin. I got a much better response and found people like who are more willing to talk to me. I've done stories centered about like young women on the internet and stuff, which, for example, I did a story about young women who joined OnlyFans in lockdown and were making money on that platform. And I felt like quite confident that I was one of the better people to tell that story, as opposed to maybe an older man in the newsroom. So definitely like use your own like personal experience and your own like individuality to find stories.
Thank you. So we're now going to go on to the Q&A part of our workshop. So first question is, what is the best way to grow your following on social media as a journalist or content creator?
Sophia, do you want to take that one? You have a much bigger following than I do.
The only reason I have a large following now is because of TikTok and the crazy, stupid algorithm that I referred to earlier. But it's really hard, I think, to analyze yourself. Like, it's, you know how you give really good advice to your best friends, but then when you have to apply it yourself, you suddenly, you know, you don't want to, or you find it hard. I'm a bit the same when I try and analyze my own social media. And I think part of it must be that I really do just try and be myself. I don't try and be a kind of a reporter or person that I visualize that I should be. I'm just myself. I just tweet out random things that I think are interesting. I make TikToks. You know, the vast majority of the content that I make on TikTok has absolutely nothing to do with journalism. You know, it's to do with my love of languages. It's to do with things in my life that I'm passionate about. And what that's ended up doing is it's made, I think, me seem more relatable to people and not like a distant sort of news figure that you couldn't just sort of go up and talk to. That's at least what I hope. But quite apart from all these sort of strategic social media things about, oh, well, if you want to grow, then you have to post 2-3 times a day, and you have to blur, and you have to do this. There are all those kind of little things as well. But I think if you don't have the core, be a nice person online, you're not going to get anywhere. And I do think about other journalists as well. When I think about the BBC, journalists who are unafraid to share the passions and areas of interest in their personal life outside of their journalism. Our Russian correspondent, Steve, plays piano phenomenally, and he's gained a following on Twitter, not for his excellent Russia reports, but for his gorgeous piano playing. Why not? It makes me want to watch his insightful Russia reports even more. It doesn't detract from them. And equally, someone like Chris Mason's just really funny online. It makes you, again, want to engage with his serious political journalism. So I think we just sort of need to be unafraid about being ourselves, as long as we don't bring, this is the jargon, but as long as we don't bring our brand or employer into disrepute in doing so.
Don't know if you have anything to add, Mojo.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say as well, like I looked at my Instagram like maybe like a few months ago, and I realized that I was just kind of like putting up pictures of me out with my friends and doing stuff. And I kind of decided that I do loads of journalism at work, and I wasn't really putting it on the platform. And I wanted my Instagram to sort of start looking a bit more like a journalist Instagram. So I've, you know, was putting up articles that I was working on, clips from the show, like little things like that. And, you know, I don't have a particularly big following on social media. I don't have a big following at all. But what I noticed that when I started like putting up articles that I've worked on, little bits that I've done at work, I was definitely getting a lot more engagement, and I started engaging with the whole community. And there's other ways that you can use social media, and your follow account shouldn't be your only, I guess, like measure of success online. You know, you might be that you're connecting with a whole new audience, or doing something on a new platform, or just trying something new.
Perfect. We've got a question here as well, which asks, how do you recommend getting over being camera shy? I'd love to go to broadcast journalism, but I struggle to see and hear myself on the screen.
I don't think anyone is, well, not many people are born just totally ready to like go and learn skills and practice. And at uni, we did like a lot of news days. Was in front of the camera, always did the behind camera stuff. So don't let that sort of hold you back. You know, people on screen, they do get training and they do get help with that. And I do believe that it's a skill that you can kind of learn. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Sophia, would you like to add?
I'd add that even people like me, I would not describe myself as camera shy. And I grew up performing on stage. So any kind I had to get used to that very quickly. And for me, it was quite transfer that into sort of TV and social media. Do I get nervous every time I'm on air? Yeah, like I still do. I've still not kicked that. And part of the reason I haven't kicked that, because I think having that adrenaline rush comes with what we associate as being nervous. It means we care about how well we do. Like, it's not always a bad thing at the end of the day. What I've had to try and channel is not let it take over or make me forget what it is that I want to say, that I know will keep me on track despite adrenaline rush, and keep it under check so that it doesn't affect my report. So basically, whenever I've had to do an interview about TikTok, I'm really rarely nervous because I know it back to front. Whereas if I got rung up right after this at 2 p.m. and I had to go, so I would spend hours cleaning myself up on it, making sure I knew what to say. But I know already I'd be far more nervous delivering that.
Yeah.
Question is, how do you stay on top of everything that's happening around the world? Do you think it's important to focus on a niche?
I don't think you need to stay on top of everything that's happening in the world. That would be just like being a journalist, to sort of have a general understanding of what's happening in the world. Of just reading news about one subject, I'd say that's probably like really all are based around sort of social media and like the online world. I think being a journalist and having a niche can be a great way. But I think on top of that, you also need to have like a general understanding of what sort of things are going on in the world.
It's weird because I'm not, you don't know what the news of like the day or the week might be. And as it comes, there are probably lots of weeks where you're like, oh, this has happened. I need to clear myself up on it so I can then make a video about it tomorrow. Whereas, yes, that's a niche, but it's a huge niche. I think of all the religions in the world and all the like massive global populations and all the different news that's happening that's relevant to people of faith and people who aren't of faith. Takes ages staying on top of all that, never mind news outside of the religious space. So just because something's niche doesn't mean it's not big.
The next question in the Q&A is actually for you, Mojo, about TikTok. So one of our listeners has said, Mojo, I found your piece on plastic surgeons on TikTok. What was the process of creating?
It actually started with a conversation I had with my cousin. We don't watch TV in the evening. We like scroll through our For You pages and we show each other like funny videos. A lot of videos promoting plastic surgery, in particular like nose jobs and boob jobs. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like all of a sudden we're getting a lot of these videos, and that's how I kind of decided to look into it. And I guess I was thinking, you know, I'm a 25-year-old woman, and you know, these videos are really impacting like me and my view on the world, and it did make me feel quite insecure. And I know there's a lot of young people on TikTok, so I made an account as a 14-year-old, and I was just scrolling through the For You page, and it didn't take very long before videos by plastic surgery surgeons promoting plastic surgery started coming up. So I started kind of looking into that, and TikTok has banned plastic surgery adverts, but that doesn't stop plastic surgeons from creating free videos marketing their procedures and just putting them on the app. So I kind of did just a little investigation around that. You know, if they're being shown to children as young as like 13 and 14, you know, that can really, if it impacts my self-esteem, if you know, what would be doing to someone who's even younger than that. So you know, we were talking about earlier about how do you find stories. Sometimes it's just something you kind of happen to come across like in your everyday life and you decide to look into.
Okay, the next question is, this is quite a broad one for both of you, but what are your future career goals and how do you plan to achieve them?
So I've not been able to announce who it's for or what it's about, but I am writing my first non-fiction book, and that has been would ever happen, or if it did, would happen when I was like 50. So I can't really believe that it's happening now. And for me, that it's the kind of thing that takes a really long time, you know, to write, to then go through the process, and then when it's out, do all of that. So that's going to pretty take over my life for the next year and a half or so. And other than that, I really don't know. And that's partly because I don't know what a career path looks like for me. I don't know. I think the future of journalism is really unpredictable. I try to look for, you know, when I try and look for other journalists who are content creators, I feel quite lonely. I feel like there isn't necessarily someone of an older generation to look up to as a kind of mentor. I can think of tons of excellent broadcast journalists to look up to, and I do, and I have mentors in that space. But in terms of aligning it and using social media for it, I don't have anyone really. I really feel like I'm trying to go process through this uncharted territory and figure it out as I go. And I really don't know
all the time. So I definitely I feel like I want to be really flexible in that going forward. So I don't have a particular goal that I'm working towards. The things I focus on are the things that I'm passionate about, the things I enjoy doing, the things that like I love about my job, and that I believe hopefully that if I keep doing those, it'll kind of take me in the right direction. Because I think enjoying your job at the end of the day is so important. And with journalism, like it is like a real passion. And if you're not passionate about it, I think you're not going to enjoy it as much.
Yeah, that's really good how you mentioned about passion, because I think in a lot of jobs, people don't really have that same sort of drive to go to work, but I think in journalism, it's definitely what you need. So we've had a few questions on how to keep nerves under control. I didn't know if you guys had any top tips for that.
Like even the thought of like doing a live, right, you know, like it fills me with nerves and dread, even though I love it secretly. My top tips are, really, really prepare as much as you can, even if you've only been given a short time frame to do so. And the best advice I've ever received about doing lives is just have 3 key points that you want to make and keep returning to them. You have to visualize, right, someone's just finished watching a live where it's my job to make sure that information gets through to them. They understand this news story. What do I want if I got to go to that viewer and ask them, what did you just learn about what's happened? I'd want them to be like, oh yeah, well, Sophia said da-da-da, and so that's why, and if they could do that, I've done my job. So I have to think about how I can make that happen. And my mouth always goes really dry if I'm nervous. I don't know if that's something an experience other people have had.
I think I have the opposite experience, unfortunately.
Oh my god. But yeah, so and I've seen on videos, like when I watch them back, I can sometimes see myself go like, because I'm desperately trying to bring some moisture back into my mouth. But I always try and have a glass of water there if I can. It's hard if you're on a set, then that's not going to happen. But if you're, the beauty of doing these kinds of things over Zoom is that I can have a glass of water here if I need it. What else? I mean, people always say this, and I know that I should probably do it more, but like breathing exercises. If you just go online and if you look up exercises to relieve anxiety, a lot of them are very useful for helping with nerves too.
Yeah, I think Sophia's nailed the answer. I don't really have that much there.
Another question we have, which will probably be quite useful to a lot of people watching this actually, is how do you approach individuals for interviews? This is coming from a journalism student who needs it in order to pass their first assignment. So they kind of want some tips with that.
I actually spend a lot of time DMing people on Instagram or Twitter where I find them, or Reddit, and I just go in. Again, I try and not sound like some alien figure approaching people. I just say, hi, I'm Sophia. I'm a reporter based in the UK. I work for BBC and I'm doing a story about blah. Would I be able to interview you about it? I'd ask you these kinds of questions. And it's a report for digital video, but it could end up on TV and radio too. Let me know. Bye. And that's what I normally do.
Yeah, I definitely say try and on the other end of the line, if you don't have any experience in like journalism or media, it must be kind of scary if you get a message from a stranger being like, hi, I want to interview for this and this. So try and be as friendly and as approachable as you can. It'll make them probably, because I think a lot of the times the reason that people sort of reject interview requests is maybe like out of fear, nervousness, not really understanding what's going on. So if you can be as approachable and as friendly and kind of put them at ease, I think that is a big part of it.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. So do you guys have any top tips for people wanting to get into the journalism industry?
One thing I'd say, and this is something I've learned recently, is that when I was at uni, I had it really drilled into me that journalism was going to be competitive and cutthroat, and everyone around you was going to be like your competitor. And this is just something that I think I've learned recently is, yes, it is competitive and yes, it's cutthroat, but the people around you are not your enemies. Journalism really is a team sport. And, it's much more important, I think, that you work with people and you become a team and you help each other out than sort of seeing everyone as your competitor, because I definitely did that when I was at university. I don't know if you found that, Sophia.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something of previous generations in journalism, but I got taught the same thing at uni. I was like, it's dog eat dog out there. And you've got to like push elbows and get through. And I'm not gonna lie, like some of it is a little bit like that, But I think you find uber competitive people in any industry. It's not only journalism. It's just in journalism, loads of them want to be seen on TV in front of millions of people, which I guess if you're in banking, you know, that's not a trait of that your colleagues necessarily possess. But my top tip would be, and this has been both helpful for my journalism and my mental health as a journalist. I think I have friends who, from quite a young age, knew that they wanted to do journalism and only journalism, and it is their entire life. They can't take a break from it for an evening or a weekend because it is such an interesting job. It's very easy to be constantly plugged in to what's going on. And certainly when I'm in the middle of a story or investigation, there is no tearing me away. I can't stop thinking about it. If I have dinner with my flatmates, I'll be there asking them questions about it, desperate to get further insight. But I am so grateful that I always pursued my other random passions in life at university. And I'm thrilled that in the middle of a pandemic, I have been able to rely on all these other passions and interests of mine to keep me going. Whereas I think, and like, I never have an evening where I'm not doing anything. There's always an evening where I can, if I want to do some practice, or I can do some drawing. And it's nice to think that none of those things have a bearing on my job. Like, they're just things that are fun and allow me to take a step back. And it turns out all of those things have ended up being good for my journalism. I once did a video about opera. I've done loads of things that are to do with these other interests and passions that I have in my life. And I don't think I'd have got a book deal without having all these other bits of my life on top of my journalism too. So I would, as kind of ambitious as you may be, never forget that there is more to life than this job.
Definitely, totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially picking up on your point, Mojo, about people need, and Sophia as well, people kind of needing to support each other. That's actually a nice way to end this, because that's how we all started, being just a group of women. It was literally on like a call like this, and we all just decided to create a platform where we could support each other. So that's a nice way to finish. Thank you so much for coming on with us today. It was so nice chatting to you both, and you gave some really good advice and answers. Maddie, do you want to add anything?
Is there any way that if people have any other questions, they can contact you guys, like on Twitter or anything, or email?
I'm on Instagram the most, and I always try and reply to my messages on there if they're nice.
Yeah, on Instagram. I can't promise that I can reply to anything before April because I'm writing the book. That is how busy I am, but I will be a lot more available afterwards, I promise.
I feel like you've both given really good advice anyway, so hopefully we've covered the majority of it. But yeah, again, thank you so much for spending your day talking to us, especially your lunch breaks, and your day off, Mojo. But it's been a really nice chat.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for having us.